So thank you very much to all to be here. I'm here to explain what we want to do at MyMicroInvest in terms of sharing value. Now, being a commercial company, this might come as a surprise that we want to share some value. We live in Europe, and we have a problem. We have a problem because it's like 3 p.m., and everybody's like falling asleep, because it's the moment in the afternoon where everybody's basically dozing off. And so I thought that the best way to actually wake everybody up, and I believe that Sylvia is actually following me on that one, is to show you some naked bodies. And those naked bodies basically impersonate a really important concept, which is the rejuvenation. We have an old economy. Thanks to our parents and grandparents and grandparents, everybody knows that here in Europe, we're talking about the old economy, right? We're talking about the old Europe, and we need to rejuvenate it if we want to pass along to our children something that's a little bit more juvenile than it was before. So we need to plunge all Europe into that source, which is the source of youth, right? How do we want to do that? It's very simple. Most of the economies of Europe have actually dissolved somehow in time. And the only way that we are going to help today's economy become tomorrow's economy is by creating new stuff. And that's how we want to rejuvenate the economies of Europe. Now, the whole model that we basically inherited from our parents is a model that is based on the Industrial Revolution. Everything from intellectual property to the whole concept of capitalism are basically inheritances of a time gone by. And with these weird structures, we have to do something more positive for the next generations in order to evolve. And so how do you rejuvenate an economy? We all know that rejuvenating bodies, as they are showing in this wonderful picture, basically we haven't found the right technology to do that. But rejuvenating economies is really something that we can do together. That's the whole idea of crowdsourcing in general, and crowdfunding in particular. Now, the main problem that we have in rejuvenating a new economy is that we have to create new companies. And in Europe, we have the lowest percentage of new companies, of startups, ever in the world. And in all the countries of Europe, the country in which there are the least startups ever being created is Belgium. Thank you very much, with a red light. Fair enough. What are we going to do about that? Well, the following. In Europe, 11% of the population dreams to be their own boss, right? It's 16% in France. It's 51% in the US. You know, it's part of the American dream. I want to be my own boss. And then there is the Belgian dream. There are like 4% of us that ever want to become their own boss. Obviously, being an entrepreneur in Belgium is an interestingly rare occurrence. The statistics are actually quite appalling. Like 6.6% of the Belgians ever created a company. And the 2.6%, we know what it is, it's forced entrepreneurship. And 4% are the ones who actually want to do something as an entrepreneur. And we realized that the main portion that was actually the main obstacle that most people would have into creating a new company, into creating a startup, was the risk that was into that action. So how could we alleviate that risk? There are several ways to do that. The first one is capital, surprisingly enough. If you review a population of entrepreneurs about the highest problem that they ever had, and the most determinant part of failure is the lack of capital. So obviously we have to address that capital problem, which is why from crowdsourcing we went to crowdfunding. But why crowdsourcing at first? For a very simple reason. It's the same reason that makes crowdsourcing in any subject a subject of value. If there are enough people that believe in a project, if the crowd actually believes in your project, then obviously your project is worth something. How can we show, as a crowd, that we believe in a project? We can tell someone that we love him, we can like him somewhere on one of those websites, Or we can put our money to work. We can actually get into action, and we can actually help him financially. When you have only your close families and friends and a few fools that are going to help you with money, obviously the crowdsourcing of the verification of your initiative is going to be quite limited. But if you have a lot of unknown public persons, parts of the crowd, that are going to help you, if you have 1,500 people basically putting money behind your project, then obviously it's worth something. It costs them more than a like. It's actually implicating them into the decision that your project is worth living. And what we all know is that crowdsourcing is the oldest way or the least bad way we have ever chosen as choosing our leaders. The whole idea of the democratic vote, based on the universal right of voting, is a way of crowdsourcing a leadership. And if you ask the same from the crowd about the validity of a project, then obviously you are reducing the risk. You are proving that there is a market. Actually, succeeding in a crowdfunding campaign is probably the best way to show that there is a market, that there is an interest, that there are enough people, hundreds, thousands of people that believe in your project and that basically want to execute on it. So if we have thousands of projects and each of these thousands of projects are being backed by thousands of people, we end up with millions of implicated people into the rejuvenation of our economy and how we want to issue that economy, that world, into the next generation. And so the whole idea of crowdsourcing, the whole idea of crowdfunding is all about alleviating, reducing the risk of anyone wanting to create a new initiative onto the economic tissue today. Now there is another issue, and the other issue is in Europe. Europe is a freaking rich continent. I'm sorry to have to say that. There are 507 million of us, and we have the highest savings rate ever on the planet. And that highest savings rate translates into 9,000 billion euros. That's 9 trillion euros sleeping on savings and cash accounts in Europe. I am not talking about investments. I am not talking about securities. I am not talking about real estate or whatever. I am not talking about insurance accounts, about lifelong saving plans. What I'm talking about is cash accounts and saving accounts. 9,000 billion euros sleeping into banks. And guess what? With all that money, the only thing that banks succeeded in doing is the 2007 crisis. Bravo. I'm really happy about them. And so that money is tied, it's got its hands tied. And the only thing that that money wants to do, if it was an animal, if it was a human, it will want to work. It will want to be useful. And so the whole idea of crowdfunding, of crowdsourcing our new economy tomorrow, is about getting that money to be happy again and to work. And I've seen that happen. Being a Belgian crowdfunding platform, what we did, amongst others, was fund a beer company, right? We're in Belgium, we like beer, everybody knows that, nothing new under the sun. Aren't we somewhere the world leader of beer? I think we just became the world leader of beer. It's weird. Still, that's what we do for a living. We drink beer. I love it. Every Belgian loves it. What that guy did was take the 1,800 microbreweries of Belgium, who basically have no access to the distribution market, and what he created was a subscription model. For 19 euro per month, every month you get a cask of 8 different beers coming from microbreweries that you will never find in the distributions and that you can taste. And I met one of his investors. And that investor, what he did is that he invested a little bit of money. I'm not talking about large amounts of money. He invested like 500 euros. He was a little bit depressive. He was the kind of guy who didn't really find a purpose in his life. And now that he invested into this company, whenever you visit him, he doesn't drink wine anymore. He should probably drink more water. But every time when you visit him, he actually pours you a beer with his eyes glittering. He starts explaining you why it's a wonderful model, why it allows all these people to actually drink beer again and enjoy beer coming from all these microbreweries. You know what he did? He actually freed 500 euro of his sleeping savings account. And now he's enjoying those 500 euros to the full. Have you guys ever looked at your saving account statement and enjoyed it? Is it fun to look at that amount and how little it actually grows or not every year? 0.5%, 0.25%, 0.75%. It's a joke. That money is sleeping. And when you look at that bank statement with that savings account, that money is yelling at you, saying, use me, do something useful with me. I'm not just here to sleep. I'm here to do something useful in the economy. And by the time that your kids are grown-ups, they will say, Dad, Mom, what did you do with your money? What did you do with me? Huh? You let me sleep. That's not good. You need to do the same. Now, I don't ask everybody to become a big sustainer of beer, okay? If you want to be a supporter of subjects that make more meaning to you, I completely understand. But think about it. Your money is unhappy, so use it from now on. Use it to do something positive. That's really important. Because for the moment, that's how your money feels. That thing there, right? Now, the whole idea also is about becoming an entrepreneur. Some of us are going to help the entrepreneurs with their money, and some of us are going to become entrepreneurs. And why is it so exciting to become an entrepreneur? I don't have to convince you guys. If you're here at the Crowdsourcing Week Europe, it's because you know what entrepreneurship is all about. But anyway, you know, I still want to hit that nail again with my own hammer. Entrepreneurship is the last adventure. When our grandparents were born, and they would take a look at the map of the world, there were terras incognitas, unknown worlds, unknown grounds, that nobody had ever set foot before. That was a complete illusion, by the way, right? Complete bullshit. There were people living on all these parts of the world. It just hadn't been charted by Europeans, right? Or by the Western world. So, at the end of the day, there was a possibility for adventurous minds to venture into the geographical unknowns. Today, we don't have any geographical unknowns anymore. The only thing we have is the world of ideas, the world of new ideas. And in that world of new ideas, when you cross the path into that world, you enter an unknown world, a terra incognita. And that terra incognita is a world of adventure. I've been there a few times. Now, most of you don't know me. I'm a Belgian guy coming from a very small beer-producing country. In 1994, I created Skynet that I sold, which was the first internet service provider in Belgium. And I sold it to Belgacom in 1998, which is the incumbent telco. By the time, we were the market leader. In 1998, I created an online broker called Keytrade. We IPO'd it in December 1999. We bought a bank in 2003, and we became bankers. And I'll tell you something, frankly, the day I became a banker, I went out and I drank a whole bottle. Out of despair. I didn't want to be a banker. I wanted to be an astronaut. I studied to be an engineer. I know math, and I thought I could be an astronaut. Unfortunately, it didn't come out, and I became a banker. That was a bad part of my life, right? Still, that was my second company, and I sold it to Crédit Agricole 4 months before the financial crisis of 2007. And ever since 1996, I've been helping entrepreneurs trying to convey their dream, trying to convert their dream into a reality. And what I can say about entrepreneurship is that it's like crossing a jungle. That's exactly what I'm showing you here. This lady there is ready to cross the jungle of entrepreneurship because it's one of the last adventures that we can live. The adventure of ideas, the adventure of transforming a new idea into a new reality. That's what entrepreneurship is all about, in your very small segment of life. Think it globally and act into your locality, into your own way, into your own field of specifics, knowledge, and perception. Now, I put a lady there, and that's really important, because I will tell you a reality about entrepreneurship that I don't like, and that really has an importance to me. A few weeks ago, I organized a barbecue into my garden. I have a big garden. We were 120 entrepreneurs. How many ladies or girls entrepreneurs you think there were into these 120 people? 4. Thank you very much for participating. Would it be 2 or would it be 4? It is really catastrophic. We need more ladies to raise to the stage and to actually launch their own new projects into a new reality. And I know what the main problem is, because I'm living it on a daily basis. Now bear with me, because I need 1 minute of your emotional mind on this one. I have 4 children, 15, 13, 5, and 3. When my last boy was born, he's 3 now, my wife was diagnosed with generalized cancer, 150 metastases, and basically the doctors told us that she was going to die within 1 week. Due to my passion for entrepreneurship, I have friends all around the planet in various laboratories who are looking and searching into new technologies. I sent them her file. Within 2 hours, I had an answer. I had a protocol for curing her, and she stayed with us for nearly 3 years and died about a year ago. I live alone with my 4 children, and still, I spend my life creating new companies, launching new companies, assembling new teams, financing new companies. I do believe that any person on this planet that has a dream worth pursuing, with or without children, can do it. And you know what? My children just love it. Every time I come back home with a new project, they ask me if the project is interesting. Now, my last little boy, okay, who was born from my cancerous wife, every time that I talk about a new project, the only thing he asks is whether we can eat it or not. That's how he is. So he loves life, and he obviously loves good food. So please, ladies, follow this example. Launch your project. You'll be surprised how many support you're going to get from the community at any moment in time. Now, the main thing about crossing a jungle is that you think that at the end of crossing that jungle, you are going to arrive into a wonderful world. The main problem is, in the middle of that jungle, there are obstacles. Sometimes the obstacles are high. And the only way for us to actually surmount those obstacles is to find some help. And the best way to find some help is to be a team. If you want to change the world, if you want to do something purposeful, something useful, please find some friends around you to help you. Because when you will be at the top of that mountain with raging winds and blinding cold, you will need all the help you can get. That's the whole idea of being an entrepreneur in a team. If you take a look at all the successes around the globe over the last 50 years, 99.9% of them were the fact of a team. It's never the fact of a single man. We want to single out one man, but we're wrong. It's all about the team. And every time you ask a guy who's been successful what he did, how he did it, he basically talks about his team. And he's right. It's the only way. And then one day, you reach that. That's what I wish to all of you, is that your project is successful. And I've been there. I've been there twice in my life. I retired. And guess what? It's fucking boring. It's boring. You know, after 5 days of putting cream on your body, right? And spending your time in the sun, what you do is you miss the action. You want to get back into it. Because this thing is boring, all right? Okay, it looks like an ideal, but you don't want to be there. You want to be there for a little while, but really imagining that with the potential lifespan we have today, 100 years, 120 years, I'm 47. Am I going to spend the next 75 years of my life on that, doing the plank? That's a little bit boring, okay? So basically, I started again with yet another team, doing yet another thing called crowdfunding. And I love it every moment. Because crowdfunding is about changing the world. It's about adding new companies on a daily basis. And some of these companies, each with a very small layer, is actually adding to the value of our society, is adding to the economic tissue. And at some point in time, some of these companies are saving lives. And it's for these companies that I get up in the morning. Let me give you an example. One of the very next companies we are going to crowdfund on MyMicroInvest does something really interesting. And I know about it because I've been in hospitals for quite some time, as you might imagine, nearly 3 years of following my wife into chemotherapy. On 3 years, on 2.5 years, she was like 120 days in chemo, so you can imagine. When you arrive in a hospital, the first thing that people want to do is make sure that you stay alive. So what do? They put a few electrodes on your torso and 1 electrode on your wrist, all right? And then there is an alarm into the infirmary's room. There is your heartbeat going on into the infirmary's room. And if your heartbeat stops, there is an alarm. Beep, 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 beep. But there is a little bit of a problem there. The whole setting is flawed. Is that if you move in your bed, the electrodes detach from your body, and the alarm rings. The whole problem is that it wakes up everybody in the department. So what do they do during night? They switch the alarm off. Because there are too many false alarms. Corollary to these switching offs, some people die during the night. It's really bad news. We need a solution for that. And we have one. And the solution is really simple. It's an electronic arm that you put atop the bed, and that detects the presence of a breathing and a heart beating. It cannot compute the rhythm of the heart beating, but it knows if there is a human being or if there is a living being on the bed that is breathing and his heart is beating. And if that one stops, there is no contact, so the physicality that I described you that creates a problem is completely gone. All right? What they created is basically the perfect life monitor. And the first time we put it to the test into a hospital, the people that are helping the doctors found another way to use it. And what they did is that they used it to monitor people who fall from their bed. Because you can imagine, for an infirmary, needing to tie someone to a bed is probably the most opposite thing you can think of about caring for people. So it was a nightmare for them to do that. And with our little appliance, what they do is actually, if the guy falls from the bed, then obviously there is no life signal down there anymore, and there is an alarm. And by the time that they had derived our system that way, we knew that we were onto something really interesting. That's what it's all about. Entrepreneurship very often saves lives. So please keep on being an entrepreneur. If you do your classes today and that you meet failure, please start up again. Because it's only by starting up several times that you will meet success. There is a weird statistic in soccer. And the weird statistic is that the most successful soccer attackants, the ones who score the most goals, are the ones who fail the most often at scoring goals. But they're the ones who tried the most often. They shot the most often at the goal. And they fail, and they fail, and they fail. And they shoot again, and they shoot again, and they shoot again, until it goes in. And that's what success is all about. It's about going again, and again, and again. And we know why we do it. We do it because it's about saving lives. That's what we did with MyMicroInvest over the last few years. Into the least entrepreneurial country of Europe, with 4% of people that want to be entrepreneurs, we raised cash. We had a lot of company requests, a lot of projects, a lot of failures, and we now have 30,000 people who are willing to invest into new companies, and the average ticket is 560 euro per person. So we're really happy about the success that we have had in the most difficult country of Europe. What we want to do is we want professionals to co-invest with us. We want professionals to co-invest with the crowd, because the crowd is helping to actually verify the validity of the business model of the entrepreneur, and the professional investors are helping with their own ways of helping entrepreneurs, business angels, early stage funds, that kind of thing. What we created is a prospectus for a public call to funds. It's not about crowdfunding anymore. It's like an IPO, but instead of listing the company, we put it into a specific vehicle that instead of having thousands of investors, thousands of shareholders into the company, we have only one. Why? Can you imagine being a startupper and having to manage thousands of investors? It's just a daunting task. And what you need is to be focused on the success of your startup. So that's why we created that weird thing. We get those prospectus approved. They are basically compliant with the European directive, which means that we could launch a pan-European campaign one of these days. And we're working on it. It might happen at some point in time. What we want is for your business not only to start up, but to scale up. That's what it's all about. It gets into that complex structure that I talked to you about, where we hold that entrepreneurship, that investment into an entrepreneur. I will not get into explaining that one. It's too boring. You know what? I preferred that slide with the lady in the jungle, to be perfectly frank. But at the end of the day, all of that complexity helps us simplify the world of the entrepreneurship, or the world of the entrepreneur, to help him create a better world. And I don't know about you, but that image of a better world speaks to me. Looks good. There is a lot of grass in front of me, which means a lot of food. And that's why we all love these kind of images.